On the Global Report, President Donald Trump arrived in Canada on Monday for the Group of 7 G7 summit, where global economic cooperation is expected to take a backseat to pressing geopolitical crises, chief among them the escalating confrontation between Israel and Iran. The annual gathering of leaders from the world's top industrialized nations is being held this year in the tranquil setting of Charlevoix, Quebec. But behind closed doors, tensions were high as world leaders prepared to confront the growing list of global flashpoints, from the war in Ukraine to Chinese trade practices and increasingly the deteriorating situation in the Middle East. But take a listen at what Trump said during the G7. Well, interestingly, according to individuals familiar with internal United States discussions, President Trump recently opposed an Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, a move that could have plunged the region into an all-out war. The Israeli proposal, which had reportedly reached senior levels within the intelligence and defense establishments, was ultimately rejected after Trump signaled both publicly and privately that the United States would not support such an operation. He made it clear he doesn't want to get dragged into another Middle East conflict, said one senior official, speaking on conditions of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the matter. Now, the revelation adds a dramatic layer to the summit, where leaders are expected to confront not only economic challenges like inflation and supply chain disruptions, but also the consequences of military escalations in several regions. Israel and Iran have exchanged increasingly aggressive rhetoric in recent weeks, including the tit-for-tat airstrikes and cyber attacks, raising fears of a wider regional war. Now, while the United States remains a key player in Middle East diplomacy, Trump's decision to take a more cautious stance marks a departure from previous administrations that had often offered unequivocal support for Israeli military strategies. Now, at the summit, Trump is expected to face pressure from both European allies and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to outline a more definitive U.S. policy on Iran. Many G7 leaders worried that the lack of a coordinated response could embolden Tehran or provoke further unilateral actions from Israel. Meanwhile, Trump is also likely to push his economic agenda, including calls for reduced tariffs and new bilateral trade deals. Though many analysts believe those discussions may be overshadowed by the rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape. The world will be watching closely, not only for decisions on economic policy, but for signs of how the West plans to navigate the increasingly volatile showdown between Israel and Iran. Well, Trump, still on the Global Report, orders largest mass deportation drive in the United States history amid growing protests. The United States President Donald Trump has ordered what he described as the single largest mass deportation program in history, calling on federal agencies to intensify raids and removals of undocumented migrants across the country. The directive, announced in a post on Trump's social media platform Truth Social, it comes amid a wave of nationwide protests and heightened tensions in major cities like Los Angeles. Trump specifically named Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York City as key targets for the expanded enforcement operation, referring to them as hotbeds of illegal immigration and accusing local leaders of undermining federal law. Well, the announcement has sparked alarm amongst immigrant communities and rights groups, who say the moves threaten to destabilize families and provoke widespread fear. While the former president calls to action follows a series of coordinated immigration and customs enforcement ICE raids that began on June 6th. These raids focus primarily on urban centers with large immigrant population. Well, President Donald Trump is focusing on these cities, and he has already led to hundreds of arrests according to immigration officials. However, exact numbers have not been publicly confirmed by federal agencies. In response, protests have erupted in cities across the United States, with demonstrators demanding an end to what they describe as militarized immigration enforcement. Tens of thousands have taken to the streets in solidarity with undocumented residents, holding vigils, blocking ICE vehicles, and rallying outside federal buildings. Well, these are the developments on the forward scene, and that is all on Undaunted tonight.